A lot of the work that I do as a counselor is revolved around supporting someone to access their true authentic selves, to find their own voice, to carve out their own path based upon the values and principles that they hold dear to them. And it sounds so straightforward and so obvious, yet it is one of the most difficult things that we can do, is to live a life based upon what we truly firmly believe in and stick to that. Because there's so much involved in being authentic. Being genuine requires so much of us. In some cases, it requires us to enhance our self-awareness, and in some cases, it requires us to make painful sacrifices. And in this video, I want to talk about what it means to be authentic and why you need to embrace it. I'm Desh. I'm a qualified counsellor who has supported countless clients in their own self-awareness and in their own mental well-being. And in this video, I want to talk about why being authentic is so crucial, because it is really the only pathway that is going to guarantee you long-term peace and contentment. Being true to yourself, being authentic, being genuine is the one thing that's going to enable you to showcase the value that you have and to enable you to find and connect with people who only serve you in the longer run. When I say be authentic, what I'm talking about is essentially that you're living your life and making decisions based upon the values and beliefs that you hold dear to you. Now, all of these things require introspection. They require you to reflect upon what belief systems you have, what values you hold dear, whether there are values that exist that you haven't yet explored, you haven't yet attached to, and why you currently hold these set of values and beliefs. Like, where did they come from? Are they true to you, or is it simply a product of your past or your environment or the people in your environment? Why do you have certain values? Why do you have certain belief systems? What is it about you now that's genuine? How much of you now is genuinely you, truly you, versus how much have you picked up from other people, or maybe you felt obliged to believe in a certain way, maybe you've grown up in a certain religion and that may be the religion for you, or maybe you feel a bit of conflicts, maybe there's another belief system you have or no belief system that you feel is more in line with you. So it's about looking at what do you feel is genuinely you? And I think a lot of that also comes down to trusting your gut instincts, which is something we're not really great at. We're not great at it because we're not really, you're not really taught how to do it. There's such an emphasis upon thinking. There's so much emphasis on analyzing and deliberating and thinking our way to kind of solutions that we very rarely rely upon our gut instinct to do that for us, unless it's quite strong and we just feel this sense, this doesn't feel right, I kind of got to trust my gut. And I think you got to invite that in, because that's also a part of your essence, that's a part of who you are. And again, that requires a bit of exploration. Why do I have a tendency to be swayed in a certain way, or why am I feeling like this? So what all of these things have in common is really to question yourself. I mean, that really is where it starts, and that's the base of self-awareness, is to question yourself. Why do I have certain viewpoints and opinions about these things in the way I do? Why is it important to me that I make this decision, or I keep this relationship, or I have this job? It's really crucial to examine every aspect of your life, from your career, your work, your relationships, your hobbies, things that you aspire to, why you have certain goals, things you want to avoid. Maybe it's from painful experiences or particular relationships or particular people. It's really going through your life with kind of like a fine-tooth comb, but really questioning each aspect of it to kind of find out, is this really me? Is this what I really believe in? And there's so many different ways that you can do that. I mean, journaling is an obvious way you can do that. Meditation is also a way that you can just sit and be with whatever's stuck, or wherever you feel a kind of conflict, you can just sit with it and just try and unpack and unravel where that's coming from. So a lot of the problems that you encounter, the solutions do sometimes lie in staying with that discomfort, giving the space, giving it the attention and space it deserves in order to find out what's really going on. Because sometimes it's only through the silence and staying with the discomfort where we get to the underlying root of the issue. And the reason where we can become more anxious and not get to the bottom line of what's causing a problem is because we start to think about the problem and we start to analyze it from our head. And the solution actually lies from the emotional level. And if you're analyzing something with your head, you're not really accessing the emotion. You're not staying with that feeling. And you'll find that if you stay with the feeling long enough, those feelings starts to change and they morph into something else, and it becomes a bit more clear why you're feeling a certain way. You can already see just how much depth and attention and activities you have to undertake in order to start questioning yourself and determining what really you believe in and what you feel is authentic to you. It requires a lot from you initially. But this is where this sacrifice of time and this attention that you're paying for yourself is going to pay off. Because you will then have a clearer sense of why you think a certain way, why you believe certain things, and more importantly, why those things are important for you. Once you have that base understanding, you will then trust that the way you think about things and the goals you have and the relationships you have, you will then trust that it is important for you and that it's going to serve you in the longer run. So any future decisions you make, you're less likely to question them. You're not going to question them if you know that you're firmly convicted and believe that the way I think about things and the way, the goals I have, this is authentically me. This is what I need to follow. So you've already started to carve out the path for your life. All you have to do now is act on it. You've got to make the actions that align with that path. Any other action or relationship or work situation, whatever it is, that does not align to that path, is a distraction. It's something that's going to pull you out from being your authentic self. So if you think about it, you're on the path, this is like your authentic zone. And anything outside of your authentic zone, you can think is designed to maybe make you please other people, maybe make you do things for others. Even though you don't want to do it, you're being roped out of your authentic self to do things for other people. Maybe you've experienced abusive relationships in the past, you're trying to break that negative cycle. So again, that's another thing outside of your authentic zone that you're trying to manage. So there's so many factors in your life that is going to test you, is going to test your ability to remain authentic. And so this is where there's some strategies that you can take to make sure you stay on that path that you're creating for yourself to build a life that's based upon your truest principles. The first, as I talked about earlier, is to know yourself. Really understand who you are as much as possible. And that in itself is a journey. That's going to evolve over time. But having a baseline understanding is absolutely necessary in order to carve out the authentic life for yourself. The second bit is to set boundaries. And I've spoken about setting boundaries before, but in this case, if you understand what's important to you and what matters to you, then it's going to be easier to set boundaries because you know what the purpose of the boundary is. The purpose of the boundary is to prevent you as much as possible from being roped outside and pulled outside of that authentic zone, that authentic pathway. So putting in boundaries, make sure you're making it clear to everyone outside that zone that I'm not interested in being involved in this or that. These are the things I'm interested in. This is what I'm focused on, and this is where I'm going to stay. But this is where it starts to become difficult because it may mean you need to say goodbye to some relationships that you've had where you've looked at them and again through that process of questioning, maybe decided they're no longer serving you. And you can click up there for a video that I made about the kind of specific questions you need to ask yourself when it comes to ending a relationship. This is difficult because in order for you to be your true authentic self, it may mean you're saying goodbye to who you were before as a product of your environment, as a product of the conditions that other people set on you, as a product of meeting other people's expectations. You're now saying goodbye to that. This is the version of you that over the longer term is not going to serve you. It's going to lead to burnout We've heard of midlife crisis. Why do you think midlife crisis occurs? Because there is a challenge in one's identity, in one's meaning in life. What am I doing? What's this really about? I've been jumping through hoops and the same patterns for 20 years, 30 years, and I'm just not feeling fulfilled. I'm being burned out. I'm stressed. Us being there for other people and meeting certain social conditions is just going to contribute to stress and burnout. Why? Because we're deviating away from our authentic self. But if you live a life that's based upon your truest values, you will never burn out. But that means potentially saying goodbye or ending certain relationships that are not supporting that pathway, or where that other person or other people are not willing to support you on your journey. Well, this leads me to the third thing, which is to stop comparing yourself. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Because what you're doing is you are taking your own identity and your own uniqueness and authenticity, and you're comparing it to someone else's authenticity. The fact is that you may have role models, you may have people you aspire to be like, you may have certain parts of someone you admire and certain parts of another person you admire. But the fact is that even if you live their life, while you think you might be happy or happier than you are, you probably won't be, because their life is going to be naturally different to yours. And this is why, as a counselor, I help people to find their voice, to find what it is about them that they really admire. What is it about them that's unique that they can cling on to? What is it about them that they can contribute to the world in a unique way? Because I firmly believe each of us are able to contribute to the world in a unique way through being genuine. Because you're automatically unique. You're contributing something different to the table each time. So by comparing yourself, what you're essentially doing is saying, my standard needs to match this other person. So you're kind of throwing your own authenticity away. You're not considering it. You're not looking at it. You're looking outwardly rather than inwardly. So comparing yourself to other people is essentially the opposite of what you have to be doing. And this means being vulnerable. And this is point 4. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. This in itself is incredibly difficult, especially if you've been through relationships, experiences with your family, perhaps friends, where you've just been judged, criticized, you've inherited this criticism, you've internalized that criticism. So being vulnerable has been shown to be a weakness. It's just exposing all your flaws, and because you've been ridiculed about these flaws in the past, it's painful to even go there. But a key part of developing that self-awareness is to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And that means removing the judgment, removing the criticism entirely. This is a process. This will take time, but this is where self-compassion comes in. This is where you have to set the goal of, my goal is to be authentic. But in order to be authentic, I need self-awareness. And in order to be self-aware, I need to be willing to ask myself questions and sit with whatever the answer is. So I have to be willing and open-minded to listen to what my body's saying, what my mind is saying, what answers I'm producing that's aligned with me, and not trying to meet the approval of anyone else. So this means completely rewiring the way that you're programmed, or you've been programmed to live your life all this time. Because maybe up until this point, you've just been pleasing people. You've just been trying to meet other people's expectations so that you could feel valid. So you could have a sense of validation. And again, this is another key area I work with, is to stop that and to focus on what it is that matters to you. And a lot of this work is simply taking the focus on the outside and bringing it in, regardless of what other people say. And depending on what relationships you're experiencing and your environment, this is a lot more easier said than done. So those areas I've just mentioned are some of the main starting points for you to be able to start to carve out that authentic life for yourself. However, if you're at that point where some of those things are quite difficult to start, it may be because of the relationship you're in, because of the kind of point you are in your life where it's quite difficult to do that, then there's a couple things I want you to consider. First of all, shift your mindset. I mean, I would even say, don't share this with anyone if you feel you're going to be judged or questioned or disregarded, dismissed. Just keep it to yourself. But just in your mind say, I've been living my life so far worried about what other people think of me. But what I want to do is promise myself that I'm going to focus on what the positives are of doing things just for me. Okay? Because I've learned so far that doing things just for me is probably been selfish, it's not a good thing, it means I'm not being helpful, I need to put other people first. This is what I've been taught. But what I want to shift towards is that if I do things for me, I'll be investing in myself in the longer term, which is going to produce longer lasting happiness and contentment and peace, which is what I want. So personally, in your own mind, shift your mindset. The next thing you can do is to surround yourself with positive people. This might be difficult if you're in an environment where you're surrounded by people who do not think like you do, or do not have the values you do, or perhaps that they expect things from you. In which case, the beauty about the world we're living in today is that we have access to technology, we can put in our earphones, we kind of create our own little world. You've seen it if you go to work, if you go on the train, if you're going outside, pretty much everyone's on their phones. They're just immersed in their own kind of, micro worlds, right? We live all in this macro world, but each person has their own micro world they've created for themselves. And I think you can turn this into an advantage by creating your own, what I call bubble. Surround yourself with people, experts, you can find them on YouTube, online, who talk about how to develop your true sense of self. You can just put these podcasts on and videos on and just listen to these people talk about it. That's a way for you to surround yourself with like-minded people or people you aspire to be without kind of going to seek them out physically in your environment if that's not an option for you. Take small steps on your journey, because if you're taking small steps, and I've spoken about this before in my previous video, you are more likely to achieve success over the longer term because you're not taking on anything you will become overwhelmed by or you are likely to not succeed in. Because a lot of people, including myself, if we take on something that's too big and we don't succeed, it can be very disheartening. It can make us not want to bother again. So just take small steps, and you will see not only are you capable of making decisions that are going to serve you, you will see the benefit and rewards in real time, because those decisions you make are going to come back to you in a positive way. And then it becomes like a snowball that becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So remember that at the end of the day, you are the one who is living your life. You are not living your life for someone else. You may be in a position where you're serving other people, you're not being authentic to yourself or true to yourself. But the fact is that at the end of the day, when you are on your deathbed and when your life is about to end, are those people likely going to be there? Are they likely going to share your experience of life? Maybe the regrets you've had. Maybe not being happy with all the decisions you've made. So just imagine yourself as that person, whose life's about to end. How would they feel about you now and the decisions you're making? One of the most common regrets of dying people is that they did not live a life true to themselves. But you can do something about it today. And more importantly, getting professional help to support you in living a life that's based upon your true, genuine self, which is a life you deserve to live. Comment below on what being authentic means to you. It means something different for everyone. I'd love to hear from you. Please like and subscribe. There's going to be more content coming out soon.